Welcome back to Interjections. I'm your host for today. Andrew is. I actually don't know where Andrew is. Where did he say he went? Did he just disappear without giving us a reason?
Yeah, pretty much.
We have Sterling filling in for us today. Thanks, Sterling. How have you been?
I've been good. Always a pleasure to be back with you guys. I'm happy to be here after the, three flawless victories, or maybe not so flawless, but we'll definitely talk about it.
Yeah, I was about to say. I don't recall winning at all in the last 2 weeks. Miko, how have you been?
Pretty good, pretty good, as Sterling mentioned. 3 wins in a row, so it's doing great, almost.
You sound like you're trying to convince yourself as much as you are trying to convince me.
Yeah.
No fun? Has it been?
Good, doing well. Andrew has pulled a Lautaro and disappeared on us, but luckily we've got Sterling here to help us talk through Inter's wins, and I'm glad we won right before the international break because I hate going into the international break on a draw or a loss. So thank God for Thuram.
Speaking of Thuram, let's get right into it. Obviously, the man of the match yesterday against Torino. The guy has scored 7 goals in 7 games. He is filling the void that Lautaro has left by his, end of season hangover or whatever you want to call it, his lack of preseason from last season. But he's been instrumental to us holding down this, I won't say good, but acceptable or competitive placing right now as we sit third with 14 points. Do you guys feel that this is just a run of good form, or has he kind of hit a new level this season? I'll ask Irfan.
I think it's just I think this is just kind of what we've seen from him for the whole year. He's become more consistent. I think his finishing is a lot better. So I think this is kind of like what we can expect from him now. I mean, obviously not a hat trick every game, but he's just been extra sharp this year. He still has, a few matches where he disappears and doesn't look that good. But for the most part, I think he's become a lot more consistent and a lot more complete than I think he was last year. And I think it's safe to expect that, he should be like a pretty premier striker in Serie A going forward. At least that's my expectation.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know that Thuram is ever going to be a guy who gives you 20 league goals a year. I don't know that he's really that type of a striker. However, saying that now, you look at, I believe he's on 7, and we still have a lot of season left. So maybe he'll make me eat my words, and I certainly hope that he does. I would love it if he would become a true out and out goal threat. He does a lot of work deeper in comparison to other central strikers, and that's kind of the beauty of having a two-man front line is that one gets to go deep while the other one gets to go in behind. Sometimes Lautaro it's coming deep, sometimes he's coming deep, but he does a lot of other things besides goal scoring. He's pretty much our only threat in terms of pace on the counter. He's the only person in this team who can realistically dribble and win fouls, which obviously, yesterday led to a red card. He regularly wins uh, PKs as well. So, Thuram does a lot. And there's part of me that, would love it if he's, scored more like a striker, but there's also part of me that doesn't want him to lose some of those other things that he does so well for the team that I think makes us a better overall team, even if it doesn't make Thuram better necessarily on the stat sheet. Um, but in terms of whether or not this is just good form or if this is his new level, um, I haven't seen enough yet to tell me that this is his level. I think that it's still very early season. It wouldn't surprise me if he still ends up at a similar goal tally to last year, maybe slightly higher. I think he had like 13 last year. I think he'll certainly surpass that. Maybe he'll end up with like 16, 17, something in that range. I think that that's a pretty fair ask for him. But I struggle to think that we're going to see him scoring at this clip throughout the rest of the season. I just don't think that he's going to be a guy who's banging in braces and hat tricks every other week. again, would love that and would be happily surprised, but I just don't think that that's the player that he is.
Yeah,
Miko.
yeah,
Sorry, you go.
yeah, I agree on that. Uh, I think, well, obviously the goal scoring rate is going to go down. He's not going to score like every match on average. Uh, but but what I like in his game or in his goals is that those does he have like 3 or 4 header goals now, and I kind of like those since it somehow to me those kind of header goals like he scored yesterday they show a bit of a what kind of a forward you are. Are you like being able to pull off such nice goals? And like the goal against Genoa in the first round, those are like more kind of a typical goal scorer goals. And I like to think that Thuram has found a bit of a goal scorer in himself now, and he's being able to pull off different kind of goals. Also, those kind of goals you see from, well, back in the day from Icardi, Crespo. That's a long time ago, but you know, uh, and yeah, he's not gonna gonna score. Probably not gonna score 20 league goals, but I could see him scoring 20 goals in total, maybe in this season. Especially if we go deep in Champions League. There's more matches in Champions League now and so on. So I could see him scoring 20 goals in total, but no, not like Sterling mentioned. He is still not going to be that 20 league goal striker. I feel it will be the rate will be shifted towards Lautaro when Lautaro gets going more. I think he's going to score more, and Thuram is going to score a bit less. But anyway, I'm welcoming this kind of a scoring habit we're seeing now, since Lautaro is having a bit of a rough time, even if he scored 3 goals in a week's time now. But anyway, we need goals from elsewhere. So happy to see Thuram contributing.
Speaking of goal scoring, who are your early picks for the Kepa Caranieri? Do you think Lautaro has fallen too far behind, or do you think he'll go on a tear? The reason I ask is I have a really good feeling about Retegi this year, and watching him the other night, I was thinking he just has such a. There's just something about him that just screams Milito to me. You know, maybe he's not as technical as someone like like a Dybala or something, obviously, but or a Vlahovic, but he's not rudimentary in that regard either. And obviously, the Argentine background is there, and I don't know, just something about seeing him wearing the Nerazzurri stripes and then scoring a hat trick against Genoa, the side where he just came from, just there. That was very Milito, because I know Milito did the same after joining us from Genoa at some point. So I don't know. I feel Retegi's looking really good this year. What are you guys thinking about Retegi or the striker situation in general? We're speaking about Vlahovic a little bit off the air, but I don't know. There's an interesting race to the Golden Boot.
Yeah, I think Retegi is the obvious favorite right now. When you look at the way that he plays, I do not agree that he's anywhere near Diego Milito in terms of his ability, but I think that in that Gasparini system, he is a very good fit, and he's going to continue to get chances, and he's going to continue to take chances. He is clinical, and one thing I will say about Retegi is that even when I watch him play for the Italian national team, he's just a really concrete player. He's not necessarily the best technically or anything along those lines, but he certainly just plays the way that you would want an old school center forward to play. He presses at the right times. He'll play with his back to goal. He'll do the dirty work, and on top of that, he finishes chances. So you really can't say too much about him from a negative aspect. And yeah, I think with the system that he's playing in, I don't see anyone catching him. The only people in this league I think who could keep up with him over the course of a season at this clip would be a Lautaro or a Vlahovic, and both Lautaro and Vlahovic did not get out of the marks very quickly this year. So I think that it's Retegi's to lose.
Not Morata or Tammy Abraham.
Yeah, Morata has to stop missing sitters. That's going to be his issue, and Tammy Abraham has to score once before he can score twice.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be a good. It is more wide open than I think it's been in previous seasons. Retegi definitely has a leg up, but I'm going to pull on Andrew and say that as soon as Skamaka's back, Retegi's going to get benched anyway, so he probably won't get there.
I disagree with
No
that. I
way.
think Retegi. I
No
think the
way.
spot is Retegi's. I think it's Skaka's going to have an extremely tough time taking that spot from Retegi. I mean, they were playing together before the injury anyway, but so there's always the chance that they could just return to playing at the same time. But we know that Gasparini has had some criticism of Skamaka in the past about his mental game, essentially switching off or not getting involved in a game or falling asleep, or was that Spalletti? But in any instance, as Sterling was saying, Retegi just seems very concrete. He's very willing. He does the dirty work. He makes the runs. In that sense, he's kind of Lautaro-esque in this, also in the same way that they share ridiculous 90s kind of spiky haircuts. But yeah, I see parallels, maybe not in quality, but parallels between the playing style or the
Style, yeah.
the kind of the build of Milito and Lautaro to Retegi.
But don't you think we're overlooking another striker? The striker that's leading the league in assists so far? The striker that's basically the pivot and the spear at the tip of the the tip of the Conte spear. Yeah, don't you think? I mean, you never know. Lukaku, he knows the league.
To come to him. I was just about to come to him, but Lukaku rather is another legitimate candidate. For some reason, I think the days of him scoring 25 plus are a bit in the past. But if there's anyone who could bring that resurgence, it would be Conte. Miko, who's your pick at the moment? How are you feeling between these strikers?
I think to me it's Retegi at this point. Thuram is not going to do it, and you asked about Lautaro. Well, I'm not saying he can't win it, but it's very very hard. I just looked that he had like 9 goals at this point last season, and now he has 2. So he need to like get going really fast if he want to be in that competition anymore.
What do you guys think is the issue with Lautaro? You think it's a question of fatigue, or do you think it, like, honestly, we're used to his goal scoring droughts, like a couple of months every season. But just based on what you've seen of him so far, match after match, and I know he's gotten a little bit better this last week, but what do you think the issue is about his goal scoring? You think it's just, not enough chances? You think it's just a string of bad luck? You think it's just bad form, or do you think it's just fatigue? I can't really quite figure it out. I mean, the one thing I'll say is, Thuram took his chances really, really well. Like the 2 headers he scored were really well placed. Great balls in, of course, but like really well placed headers. Like Lautaro had a similar chance on the third Thuram goal. Great cross in from Bastoni, and he headed it straight into the goalkeeper again. And so I don't know if it's just like not crisp finishing, which I think has been a bit of an issue with Lautaro throughout, or if it's fatigue, because sometimes he doesn't look like he's in great shape. But I can't quite figure out why he's started off the season so relatively poor.
Maybe it's a bit of everything, and yeah, he had other header as well yesterday, and he missed the goal there. That was a bit harder than the one in the Thuram's third goal, but yeah, I feel that maybe he's not getting as much chances as usual, and maybe Thuram is like getting some of those. And I'm not saying that they are like Thuram is taking Toro's place those chances, but they are like maybe positioned in a way that maybe some of those chances, like the crosses, they end up to Thuram's head instead of Lautaro, since Lautaro can figure out, okay, Thuram is there, I'm going a bit further or a bit on the right or left, so, and when the cross will land, that will determine who's going to connect that. So I wouldn't call it purely on any form, even if he was pretty bad form like a few weeks ago, but I think it's getting better now. But the goal scoring, I think he doesn't have as many chances anymore because he's never been like super clinical anyway. But what do you think, Sterling?
Well, I think the Lautaro's whole issue this season stems from preseason, and his lack of preseason. He didn't get any preseason minutes essentially at all, and then all of a sudden he was just thrust into starting the first game of the season without ever getting any preseason minutes, and obviously that's a knock-on effect from the fact that they went all the way to the Copa America final, and he didn't really get much of a chance for a rest after that, and I think that it's become kind of a spiraling thing where he misses preseason. He comes in, he's woefully out of shape. He's out of form. He's not scoring goals. Lautaro is obviously a big confidence player, as we've seen throughout his career. When he's scoring at a high clip and when things are going his way, he tends to take advantage and he scores a lot more. He just stumbled out of the blocks. And I don't really think that that's on him. I think that that was a decision that was made by the club for him to obviously take some time and rest and come in and hopefully be more refreshed. But now, when I look at him playing yesterday, even though he has scored goals this week, it still feels like he's out of form, and it still feels like he's wanting things to. He's trying to force things essentially. It seemed like yesterday I think what's happening with him a little bit is that he is looking up at the leaderboard in terms of who's scoring goals, and he sees that Retegi is scoring goals. He sees that Vlahovic is scoring goals. He sees that Thuram is scoring goals, and he thinks, "Hey, I have to be up there with those guys, and I'm already way behind, and I'm a Ballon d'Or candidate, and I got to figure out a way to get a bunch of goals so I can get back up there amongst those guys." And when you are playing with that type of a mentality, you're putting additional pressure on yourself. And I feel like yesterday he just wasn't letting the game really come to him. I feel like he was trying to force it. And that's going to be really difficult to do, especially when you're just not really in form and you really haven't been in form this whole season. So I think it's just been kind of a compounding effect that's just stemmed from the lack of preseason and has carried into the year. But I think he just needs to relax. I think he needs to stop worrying about, how many goals he's going to score in total and just, get back to scoring goals regularly and it'll all kind of take care of itself.
Yeah, in before Jay tells us that he's just not actually that good. Go ahead, Jay.
Well, fuck, you stole my whole thunder, didn't you? Like, literally word for word what I was going to say. I think it's a case of all the factors above that you guys mentioned, plus the fact that he's just not that good, like, it's hard to come back from an exhaustive long season playing 40 something games and then going straight to the Copa America and then playing all the way through that. It's hard to do that when you're just not that good, and it's hard to kind of pick yourself up off the ground when you're down in poor form and you've only scored 1 goal in 17 games when you're just not that good. So I think it's a combination of all these things. As you guys were talking, Juve conceded their first league goal of the season so far, and actually ended up drawing the match to Cagliari 1-1. So a little bit of positive news there. And actually, it's something that I wanted to speak about, not Juve specifically, but going back to Torino for a moment. Our current defensive concerns, as mentioned, this was the first goal Juve have conceded in 7 league games. Meanwhile, we are at 9 league goals conceded in 7 league games. Some of these opponents we've conceded against have been trash, like Monza, who are 20th, Genoa, who are getting spanked by everyone, Milan, and 10 men, Torino. There was no point in that game where I felt reassured. And despite having, obviously, the lion's share of possession, numerous chances to make the game 3-0, 4-1 kind of thing, we find ourselves pegged back with a 1 goal margin, to wrap up the game. And yesterday we saw a goal stemming from, I don't even know what you or how you describe the first goal. Is that a Chirby mistake? Is that a Bisseck mistake? Is a guilt shared between the two of them? I'm going to throw Sommer in there as well because I thought he was very, very static instead of trying to rush out and kind of challenge Zapata as well. And then you got the penalty, which was obviously a tired challenge from Chalanolu. What's going on, guys? I'm going to toss it over to Miko first and ask, give me your diagnosis of this current defensive situation and how concerned are you on a scale of 1 to 10?
Yeah, we talked about this week ago after Udinese match, and we conceded 2 goals in that match as well, and it wasn't really that bad, the defending, but still we managed to concede those goals, and we figured out what's going on, and it's the individual mistakes usually, and I feel like it was the same in this match as well. Like we don't have any kind of panic or anything in the defense usually, but still we managed to these plays ended up like the play goes on like the first goal. And by the way, I think that was like 90% bisseck. But anyway, the play goes on and suddenly we managed to play it in a way that there's like a Zapata 1 versus 1 against the keeper, and it doesn't look like there's any kind of panic, any kind of worry anywhere there. But still, there's I don't know. It's hard to explain. Is it like some second loss of focus at some point in the play, and then the opponent they use it every time? Because I don't think we concede chances too much. We get to that later when we talk about Red Star, but even in the league, I don't think we concede that much, XG or like a threat to our inside our box or something, uh, like a chances or attacks which could lead to chances or goals. But somehow the opponents they take full advantage every time we make some kind of mistake, and I want to explain why Bisseck for me is the main culprit in the first goal. I think he made 2 mistakes in that goal. Maybe Darmian made a mistake as well there. But first thing was Acerbi lost the aerial ball like 100-0 to Zapata. Zapata pushed him with two hands. That's one case, but he lost the ball, and then it still ended up to Bisseck, who made the mistake of trying to pass it past Zapata, who intercepted it, and then after that, ball bounced to I don't know who Torino player it was, and Bisseck decided to try to intercept his pass as well instead of going after Zapata, who was running behind his back, and Bisseck was late on that, and then Zapata was through. Maybe Darmian should have reacted better what Bisseck was doing, but I guess that was like maybe that was unlike or unexpected behavior by Bisseck, so Darmian didn't expect so that he would need to run after Zapata, and then it was already late when the pass went through. But about being worried, I'm slightly worried because this can't go on. I mean, why it's only slightly is that it can't go on forever. That opponents keep taking advantage every chance we give them. But 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 the worry part is that this keeps happening like several games already. It's how many games? It's like 9 games in this season. We didn't concede in Champions League, but then in the league we've conceded 9 goals in 7 games, and that's just way too much. Way too much. Good thing is we keep winning. Like okay, mostly winning, but the issue is this that we can't even secure the game against 10-man opponent. That's not good. That's not good.
Yeah, I think my concern is, I'm with you, Miko. I think a lot of times where we concede, it's pretty clearly individual mistakes, and there's one thing to be said about that. I agree with that, but I think given the sample size now this season, I do think there are some systemic issues. Now what those are, I don't know for sure. Maybe it's just a lack of kind of midfield support, because I do think just in general, with the exception of Barella, our midfield play so far this year has been pretty poor. And in matches where the midfield play has been really good, I think we've dominated and played really well. So maybe that's part of the issue. Obviously, the individual mistakes need to stop, but the match against Torino, giving up 2 goals in whatever capacity when you're up, a man against a team that has played well this year, but it's by no means an exceptional team, is just completely unacceptable. And Zapata made our center backs look really kind of unsure. Like, he was really good for them throughout the match for Torino. So again, I'm not saying that there's like a fire alarm here, but there's definitely some concern. I think Acerbi looks a lot slower than he did last year. He's slower to react. He gets outrun a lot of times. The amount of times we've given up goals where there's either a forward or a midfield that like literally just like runs through the midfield and a center back and like a supplementing kind of wing back is kind of unbelievable. I'm thinking about the Pulisic goal, and then thinking about the goal from um, Zapata yesterday. The other thing that I find really troubling, and I know Jay's talked about this a lot, is that against Torino we gave up a goal in like the 87th minute. Against Udinese it was like the 83rd minute. Milan it was the 89th minute. Monza it was like the 81st minute. And then you go back all the way to Genoa and it was like the 92nd minute. Like, we're giving up goals really late in the match, which to me is a sign of either a lack of concentration, bad substitutions, or both, or it's just, tiredness again. Like, I'm not making excuses, but the fact that we keep conceding late, and a lot of times it's goals that either cost us 2 points or cost us 1 point because we end up losing instead of drawing, or drawing instead of winning. It's kind of shocking that a team as experienced as us, that knows the system as well as we do, keeps giving up late goals. I mean, it's really poor form, and I don't know, it's really starting to like piss me off, because you look at these individual players and you're like, all right, they should be good, and yet we just give up like the stupidest goals and late goals and costly goals, and it's just unbelievable.
Yeah, I think when you look at our season thus far and the amount of goals that we've given up, it's hard to just say it's down to any one thing. It's not just that the players are a year older, and it's certainly not just that we've changed the way that we approach games tactically. I think that both of those things certainly maybe do play a factor, but I think overall it just comes down to attitude. I think that when you look at the way that we've approached this season, there's been a lot of complacency, and it's really throughout the entire team. And maybe that starts with Inzaghi, and maybe he needs to be harder on the team. Maybe he needs to make some people feel like maybe their position in the team is not so secure. But I'm not sure that that's necessarily who Inzaghi is. And so, when you have a manager who gives the players a ton of confidence, especially his veteran players, and he relies on them to get him out of those tough situations, which they have previously. Well, you're going to have a lot of comfort inside of the team, and I think that sometimes that comfort can be a little bit of a hindrance. I think that coming off of a historic season like we had last year, where we had a fantastic defensive record, won the Scudetto by was it 15, 16 points, something like that, and then coming into this season, I think that a lot of the team just kind of mentally said, "Hey, you know what? We did it. We got the 20th. That was the second star. We had our Scudetto packed, and we accomplished it. now, we're the shit and we can kind of relax and coast through some of these games because, we were working really hard last year in a lot of those games. And really, maybe we didn't have to work quite as hard. We won it by so many points. I mean, obviously we were just that much superior to everybody else. And so I think that you've seen just that little bit of mental that lack of mental sharpness kind of creep in a little bit. And it doesn't take much. If you give teams a sniff and they feel like they can get into a game, then they will get into a game, and you're going to find yourself in more of these situations where all of a sudden, boom, it's 3-2, and the team scores in the 85th minute, and all of a sudden things are rocky again. It seemed like that didn't happen to us last season, and I think a lot of that did come down to our mentality. But it wasn't that long ago where this was the norm for Inter, and the norm for Inter under Inzaghi. We shouldn't forget that. If you look at how long Inzaghi's been here now, and you compare the times where this was the norm versus when it wasn't the norm, it's been the norm more than it hasn't been the norm, if we're being really honest about it. Last season was I guess, I don't want to say anomaly per se, because I don't think it was an anomaly, but I think that, that was more of a rare occurrence for us to be so defensively sound for such a long stretch than how we've been in other moments under Inzaghi. So, it's a tough question to answer, but I think it does come down to ultimately, mental sharpness, and that does start from the top. Now, the only other thing that I would say is that I do want to touch on bisseck for a quick second here. I like bisseck. Okay, let me be very clear in that. I think that he looks like a great player when you see him. He certainly kind of passes that eye test. I compared him on the forum to a really hot but dumb blonde, where it's like, man, super attractive, super fun, great technique, super fast,
You
all the
can't say
things that
that on this
you,
podcast, mate. You can't say that on this podcast. No, I was kidding.
what, hot dumb blonde? Oh, am I gonna get canceled? Um, but no, listen.
Absolutely deplorable behavior.
But
Sickened to the core.
real misogynist podcast. No, so but the thing about him is that like the ditzy blonde I'm using in this reference is when it comes down to it, and when you need the concreteness, he's lacking there. And if you look at the goals that we've given up so far in the league, you can look at four of them and say Bisek was involved in those four. Obviously, there's the Genoa one where he inexplicably has a handball late in the game. There's the two against Udinese where he's involved, and then there's the first goal yesterday where I would say that's, as Miko said, 90% on Bisek, and that's an ongoing thing with him, and that's something that we need to address because you can't live with a center back who is at fault for goals every other game, and right now that's essentially been his record to start this season. He is regularly putting the team in dangerous positions, and I've said this about him in the past as well. He doesn't sniff danger. He does not read situations well. He is not great against one-on-one dribblers, and even worse, aerially, for his stature, he tends to lose flight of the ball a lot. He is really sketchy when balls are whipped into the box at times as well. And so when you start to kind of add all those things up and you say, well, wait a minute, these are attributes in a guy you want to be a starting center back for a Scudetto contending team. I mean, it doesn't really, all of a sudden, it starts to look a little bit sketchy when you're like, hey, the guy's great going forward, but he's not an attacker. He's a defender. And so, you know, yeah, there's some issues there with him. And that you do think, hey, he's 23 years old. Hopefully he'll iron a lot of that out by the time he's 26, 27. But how many of those growing pains are you willing to put up with while he's playing for your team? When you're trying to compete for trophies and you have a guy who has these mental lapses, are you going to put up with that? Because he's 23, he's not 19. Okay, so he should be a little bit better. He should be ironing out a lot of those mistakes. You shouldn't be able to look at a guy and say, "Hey, 4 of the goals that we've conceded have come because of you making mistakes." That's a lot, even for a young player. And that's something that I think the sample size now is big enough, having watched him last season and watching him the start of this season, that that's something that really needs to be addressed, and hopefully it is something that we can fix, and he can go on to be a fantastic player for us long term, because again, the attributes are there, but there's some worrying signs there, and I don't think it's wrong to call that out, because we certainly call it out when we see it in other players, and Bisseck gets a lot of love from Inter fans, and rightfully so, because he is capable of great performances like against City. But overall, when you look at his total record for this team, there's some real worries in there. So just something I wanted to touch on really quickly, and hopefully he will improve in the long term.
You mentioned the hunger of the players being a big factor in us conceding so many goals, especially late goals. That the example you used was how a lot of our guys probably thinking we did it after last season. We won that second star. We achieved the whole Scudetto pact after the first 2 years of Inzaghi's Inter career, where the first one was like the bottle job, the second one was just like a fiasco, and then the third one we finally did it kind of thing. And it goes to that thing that I've been speaking about week on week on week on week. This is why you need fresh blood, so that the blood that is there doesn't get stale. Again, I don't kind of bitch about it for no reason. So I think we're going to see the effects of that really bite us in the ass if we haven't already. We've already dropped so many points that we really shouldn't have. And, I think as we all agree, we shouldn't be conceding goals so routinely so late. It's not just like it's not the fact that it's just more common than it was last season. It's at this point, it's like statistically almost guaranteed that we're going to do it, because I think we've done it pretty much every every game that we've played in the league, if not the majority of games that we played in the league. So yeah, it's a concern. And regarding bisseck, I agree. He needs time, he needs patience, and not to derail yet another episode with riveting Aslani talk, but the reason I'm a bit more willing to give bisseck time is I feel like I've just seen more from bisseck in the time that he's played than someone like Aslani or fucking Buchanan.
The ceiling is higher. There's no doubt about that than Aslani.
Yeah, don't forget that loser still exists, Buchanan. Anyway, let's move on to the game that happened midweek, where we played. Who the fuck did we play?
Red Star.
Red Star. Take us through the game, Miko. Tell me your some takeaways from the game. How you analyze the performance.
Yeah, it was. If I remember, it was like not a tough first half, but it wasn't like the end result, which was 4-0. So the first half looked a bit more even if we scored first there. But I made some notes about the match, and I wrote that Zielinski didn't have a great game, at least in the first half. He had missed passes here and there. He started the match. I think was it maybe his second start this season. First was the City, and the second one was this one. And he wasn't great, to say the least. And then other point was that he was playing on the right because Mkhitaryan started again. But he was quite active. He was there all over the place in the match. He had chances, but didn't manage to score. And then, as we talked about the defending, I think in the first half there was a bit of a this kind of a lack of focus again, or something that allowed Red Star to have some kind of chances. Not any great scoring chances, but there were chances which you could see Inter concede, like we conceded during the league season. They haven't been all these chances we've conceded, all the goals we've conceded haven't been like great chances, but some of them have been like really low XG chances, and I think Red Star got few of those in the first half, and the defending wasn't like perfect or anything. But we managed to survive that, and then in the second half, finally we got the 2-0 goal by Arnautovic when Taremi had a great interception on the edge of the opponent's box, and he dished to Arnautovic, who slotted it home like an empty netter. And I think Taremi and Arnautovic, they were a good pair in this match. Of course, the opponent, I think they've been the worst opponent we've had in this season. Of course, it was home match for us and like a foreign team there. So I don't know, was it expected? But they were. I think that they've been the worst opponent, and it showed there. Taremi and Arnautovic were active, and they got chances, and Arnautovic scored one, and I think he got one other good chance, and Taremi scored the penalty and assisted 2 goals. And yeah, it was a great match by Taremi. The second assist was also after he took away the ball from opponent's defender, and then was it to Lautaro? I think it was Lautaro goal. He assisted that one. So yeah, good things. Obviously, we got the 3 points, but also the 4 goals, because now in the new format, every team is in the same league table. So there's a higher chance of teams being at even points in the end. So the goal difference is what matters. That's the first tiebreaker. So it's important to score a lot of goals, and other teams have been scoring a lot of goals as well. There's been a few really blowout matches there. So it's good that we are able to score, and even the players. I think it was Bastoni, but also Inzaghi mentioned after the match that they recognize the situation that we need to score goals, because that's what matters in if teams are on tight points. So yeah, it was a good match and good start. It's good to go from now to the next matches in Champions League.
Just want to comment quickly on Taremi. It's a bit of an absurd game in the fact that 2 goals were scored directly from him intercepting the ball high up the opponent's side of the pitch, which is not all that common. But I gotta say, he's, for the second time now that he's started, I think both games in the Champions League, his freshness and his pace and his obvious fitness has really impressed me. You know, he doesn't look labored. Even deep into the game, he looks fairly agile and light and springy, considering he's also 31 or 32. So far, that's helping allay some fears about the guy, and obviously his goal was well deserved. It's a shame he didn't get that goal yesterday against Torino. That was a sitter, which he missed. But yeah, just my 2 cents on Taremi. Sterling.
Yeah, really quickly to touch on Taremi. He was the guy I wanted last season instead of Arnautovic. I've kind of been high on him for a while now. I'm glad that we did end up getting him long term, but I always kind of think about, man, if we would have waited a little bit longer in the window last year, maybe we could have swept Taremi up at the end there instead of Arnautovic, and what that may have done for our season last year. But anyways, the past is the past. No, Taremi's a good player. You know, he's high motor, high work rate, gonna press, and you know what I love about him is that there's strikers that press, but you know they're never actually going to tackle the defender and win the ball back. They kind of just press to show that they're pressing, so that the manager doesn't yell at them, or the fans aren't on their backs, or everyone can kind of feel good, like, oh, look how hard he's working. No, Taremi's actually trying to win the ball back, and he does win the ball back, and he does it a lot more than I honestly expected him to do. I didn't really see that as being a huge part of his game, but it's been a very welcome surprise, and he's also very unselfish. He's a real assist man, team first type of guy. He will do the dirty work. He'll drop deeper than you would expect him to drop, and that actually that led to a chance yesterday, actually, when he gave the ball away around the halfway line, when you know, our back line was around the halfway line. We were playing a higher line at that point, and he gave the ball away, which resulted in a counterattack. But overall, I mean, he seems really assured. when he drops deep as well. He's a safe outlet for the team. The only thing you can say is that he hasn't really scored enough goals. He has one goal, and it's from a penalty kick. Obviously, he missed a sitter in open play yesterday. He was off balance when he took the strike. I don't really think that was a bad finish, given the fact that he was essentially falling backwards when he hit it. But overall, we need to see him get into more goal scoring positions, and he's a striker, so we want to see him score goals and goals from open play, not just from the penalty spot. Although it is great to have another assured penalty taker in our team, because obviously we don't want to rely on Lautaro all the time to take those if Çalhanoğlu is not available. To touch on the game as a whole, it was one of those games where I have to think back to prior years, and maybe try and stay humble a little bit and just realize that, we played a pretty weakened side in the Champions League, and we won 4-0. We didn't play either of our starting strikers. We had our third and fourth striker playing in this match, and we ended up winning pretty comfortably. And so there has to be something to be said for that. I understand that Red Star is not going to be a team that's certainly competing to win this competition. They're not a team that probably would compete to win in Serie A. So their level is their level, but it's still a Champions League fixture. We were still able to roll out a weakened team, rotate, and still be able to comfortably pick up 3 points. We kept a clean sheet. We ended up helping our goal difference by getting that third and fourth goal. So overall, it's a successful day at the office, and I think that we should appreciate that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, look, this team is perfectly capable of grinding out a 1-0 win in that kind of a match before, or even slumping to like a 0-0 draw. So, we should take the wins when we get them. And thanks to some Iranian excellence, our perfect Persian came through for us and, gave us 2 assists and a goal. Good on Lautaro to give him the penalty to get that goal. So props to him. But yeah, it was a comprehensive
Probably
win.
terrified he'd miss it.
It was a comprehensive win. The forward play was good. Thuram played really well. I agree. He's almost like too unselfish at times. I'd like to see him get some more shots on goal. Obviously, if he gets more shots on goal, he'll probably score more goals. So, but if that's the thing that you're complaining about for your third string striker, then I think you're in decent shape. So, the midfield was good that match, and the defense kept a clean sheet. Summer looked good too. So again, yeah, we have to keep in mind that we weren't facing great opposition. But again, we got the job done. There's something to be said about that in a midweek kind of fixture, and resting a bunch of our starters. So I'll take it. And I don't think we ever looked like we weren't really in control of that match, which was also good. And we didn't concede a late goal, even if it would have just been a consolation goal. So all in all, it was like a result in a match that I think we needed. And I actually thought that we would come off of that with some kind of really good confidence and some swagger in our step. But I don't know. Then we came out against Torino, and I didn't feel that great going into the international break. But I'll take it.
How do you guys see the competition in the Champions League now that everyone is in the same table, so we can look all the teams and figure out who are we competing against at this point?
How many points do Milan have? Just remember.
I don't know. I'm not sure if they have any.
Yeah, it's 0.
Yeah. Yeah, but yeah, I would say that the schedule hasn't been like too welcoming for them. They had Liverpool and Bayer Leverkusen, so we're gonna have our tougher matches as well ahead. Even though we had the toughest one already.
Yeah,
so,
Man City. Yep.
Yeah, so that's a bonus there.
I was saying, in the reality, this format gives a lot of room for error. So I still think that they're comfortably going to get through this. It's interesting because this is our first season seeing it in this format. So we're watching all these matches, and we're seeing some surprise results pop up here and there, but none of us really know how much it's
Yeah,
going to matter just yet,
exactly. Yeah.
because we haven't been through this before. So it's like, Real Madrid loses away at Lille. Does that mean that they're really out of being a top 8 team, or do they just win out the rest of the way and be fine? Or, we don't really know exactly what points are going to be necessary. I think people have done a bunch of calculations using software, and that means that, and they're being told that's 15 points is usually what you need to be a top 8 team, and then avoid the extra 2 games. But we just don't really know exactly how that's going to go. And in reality, yeah, I think you have to be extremely, extremely poor to avoid making it through this first round of group stage games, and getting at least into that 2-game playoff to get you into the round of 16. I just don't see any big team missing out on that. And maybe maybe that's a good thing. Maybe having these extra games and doing it this league format means that you're going to have more good teams, quote unquote, in the knockout stages, and there's going to be more jeopardy there. And maybe with it being more of a league type of table, it does help the cream kind of rise to the top, so you don't have as many surprises. But yeah, this format for me, the jury's still out, in terms of whether or not I actually like it. I don't like that it has extra games. I know that, but whether or not it's going to be more exciting for me as a fan, I'm still kind of firmly on the fence, and I really haven't been able to decipher just how I feel about it quite yet.
I think I think our target is for sure the top 8 to avoid the extra 2 matches. And like you just said, the 15 points might be enough, but I think 16 points is fairly confident that you will make the top 8 based on the simulations. But yeah, it's the first year with this format, so anything can happen. But that's why the goal difference, I think, might be important in this kind of battles for the top 8 and so on. I think for us it would be extremely important to get to the top 8, because we don't want those extra matches in February. We have the Super Copa and all that kind of stuff in January, and we don't want those extra matches. We want to have like a few weeks there with no midweek games. So I would focus a lot on these league phase matches in the Champions League, and we're gonna have the tougher matches will be there soon. The Arsenal and Leverkusen will be not next ones, but I think they will be coming there soon. So it's going to be very interesting to see how we do against them, especially Leverkusen.
We have one kind of easy-ish game away at Young Boys in about 3 weeks from now, or 2.5 weeks from now, and then we have the 3 in a row: Inter versus Arsenal, Inter versus Leipzig 3 weeks after that, and then 3 weeks after that, or 2 weeks after that, we have Leverkusen versus Inter. So the Arsenal game is by a long margin the most difficult game of the 3. Everyone knows my thoughts on Arteta and Arsenal.
They are great.
That's right.
Amazing.
Arguably up there with Fonseca's Milan as one of the most tactically innovative young squads, playing the most revolutionary and attractive attacking football out there. So,
but it's the home match, right? The Arsenal.
I think the last time we played Arsenal at home, we lost 5-1, didn't we?
yeah, but that's like
back in like 03 or 04 or something.
That's 20 years ago, so let's forget that one. But yeah,
I will say about the tie. I will say about the Champions League format. I heard some schnoz going on about how the new format is so great that we have big games like Inter versus Man City right from the get go, and this is not something that you would normally see in the group stage and all this kind of shite. And I kind of agree to an extent, but I feel like the games, when they are just one-off games and not like home and away ties, they kind of lose a bit of gravitas. They lose a bit of meaning to them. There's less of a story to them. They feel a little bit inconsequential that way. I know that everyone here was pretty much saying the Man City game. Obviously, we'll try our best. We'll put our strongest lineup out there. But if any game's ever a budgeted loss, then it's this one. It's kind of a bit of a throwaway game, a bit of a free punt. So in that sense, the games can feel somewhat inconsequential. But at the same time, I do get where they're coming from. They talk about the big games because, yeah, I guess in the so-called group stage, we're going to be playing at Man City and then playing at home to Arsenal. So those are two big games that you wouldn't get in the group stage normally.
Yeah, the new format is like 2 extra matches, and those extra matches are basically the matches against the teams in the same pot you are. So there's like two extra big games for the pot 1 teams, like the top teams. So in a sense, there's more big games. But yeah, they don't have that big of a meaning because there's the 8 games in total. But yeah, so far I kind of like the format because everyone's in the same league table, so there's like more interest to like follow everyone else how the other matches go, because they affect you as well.
Yeah, but you know what? It's different. It's new, and I don't get it, so I don't like it.
You don't still get it.
I still don't get it.
Okay, it's okay.
I just can't figure out, like, kind of like what Sterling was saying. I just can't figure out how much I'm supposed to care if we draw or if we lose. I can't figure it out yet. Like, I was so comfortable in the old Champions League standard, like the format. I knew if we draw one of those matches against a team that's like in a lower pot, we're like totally screwed, or like you could afford 1 draw, but you better get 2 wins. And now I'm just like, I don't know what to feel. Someone tell me what to feel. So
Yeah, no, I agree with that. It's like that scene from 40-Year-Old Version where Kevin Hart is arguing with the guy, and he's like, you're throwing a lot of big words at me, and I don't know what those mean, so I'm gonna take it as disrespect.
yeah,
And it's just, it's like, I really don't know what any of this means yet, but it'll be interesting. One question I did have for the format, maybe you guys know. So the teams that finish, I guess, 9th through, is it through 16? Am I saying that right? Or
I think it was 24, 9 to
24?
24.
Yeah, that would make sense. Yeah,
So they have
so.
they have the extra playoff round.
Okay. So does the 9th team play the 24th team, and it goes like that, and then the 10th plays the 23rd, or is it just another draw?
I'm not totally sure, but I think it's like fixed. There won't be a draw. I think it's fixed, like you said.
Okay. Interesting. One more quick question I had before we wrapped up today, guys, is now that we're 7 rounds in, this is usually around the time that things start to settle down and you start to really get into the meat of the season here. Who's the biggest Scudetto challenger, would you guys say?
Milan.
We knew Jay was going to say Milan. There's zero doubt about that. But maybe expound on that a little bit, Jay. I mean, who do you think is the number 1 Scudetto challenger? And if it is Milan, why?
They destroyed us. I mean, that says everything. The fact that you can kind of go out and dismantle a champion as impressively as they did to us. I mean, look, I've been wanting to kind of revisit the derby for a long time, and going back to what I feel like everything about that game was just off. There was that bullshit with the ultras and the lack of a choreo because, I can't remember if someone died or something like that. The mood around the fan base, the complacency of the players not having yet woken up from the season. I still don't think they've woken up. Yeah, everything about that game was just fucking off for me. I don't want to say that's like a point in our, favor, or that's like an excuse to kind of make things more acceptable. But I got to say that, the fact that we were kind of tactically outplayed from the get-go, they fought harder, they played better, and the scoreline was very flattering considering the amount of clear-cut chances they missed in the second half. I've always said Milan have the squad to do well in the league. Like, everyone talks about how Motta has not conceded any goals at Juventus and Napoli have Conte back, and I'm not saying that these things aren't in themselves worth consideration or aren't to be respected. They are. It's just apples versus oranges. Which do you think is more important, or which do you think is a bigger factor here? And I think Milan just have more weapons to win games, especially against big opponents. Like I've never seen a player like Liao where if you were to go to YouTube and watch like Liao highlights or like Liao's best goals, like 80% of them start from his own fucking half. That's the kind of player he is, and that's the kind of player that Milan possess. The kind of spastic that can pick the ball up in his own half and just dribble past 8 losers and score. Like it's infuriating, but what can you do?
How many goals does he have this season?
I don't know, probably more than Lautaro, but you get my point. Milan have these kind of creative, attacking, fast players. Look how Pulisic just kind of like meandered through our defense and scored. And I think these are kind of outliers, no doubt, but they're useful weapons to have when the regular game plan doesn't work. They have game breakers like Liao. We don't have game breakers. We have like Damian coming off the bench. We have Aslani off the bench. We have Fratesi there to try and pick up some scraps rather. And over time, they'll figure out a kind of consistent game plan to win games through your more kind of conventional methods. And then again, when that doesn't work, they'll have people like Liao and Pulisic kind of like chipping in big time with goals and goal contributions like this, shouldering that burden on their own. So that's why I see them as the most serious threat. But yeah.
All right. Okay. All right. Look, the answer is Napoli, and it's pretty clearly Napoli because Conte has a system. This is just how he does it. He's gonna, grind out these results. They have a defense that's better than ours. I think they just play like once a week too, right? I mean, that's the formula for Conte, and so he's got Lukaku back. He's got some creative players, including probably one of the best players in Serie A on his team. And the schedule, down the stretch is going to make a pretty big difference for him. I think honestly, right now we're second in the table. Milan, if they win, will join us right there. And the top is bunched up as you would expect after 7 matches, but Napoli are first, and they look good on paper. They look pretty good overall. There's no reason to think they're not going to be there down the stretch. So, I think Juventus have a few issues to work out, and their defense has kind of carried them so far, but now they also have Bremer injured, which I think is going to make it challenging for them. And they're going to deal with the same kind of match, congestion as we deal with. And I don't know, other than Milan, which I still don't think Fonseca's that great. I still think he's kind of a fraud. He had one, good match against us, which I still think we were more poor than Milan was great. So we'll see down the stretch if they can continue that form. We know Liao basically checks out for half the season anyway. So I don't know. I'm not that convinced.
With you
Milan
mean like Lautaro?
Yeah, well, I'm just not convinced with Milan. I think Napoli is probably, just because of the circumstances surrounding it, they're probably the ones that are going to be the biggest challenge down the stretch. And to be honest with you, I think as of right now, it's wide open. I mean, I can't even say, that someone is a challenger to Inter because, frankly, I think it's still so wide open given the form we're in, that, I don't think just framing it as like, who's a challenger to us is probably not accurate. I think it's wide open. It could be anybody really. But the best chances, I think, still lie between Napoli, us, and then maybe Milan and Juve next.
As someone who predicted that Napoli is our biggest rival before the season started, I keep that prediction and will continue to believe that Napoli will challenge us, and that's based purely on the fact that they don't play in the Champions League or Europe at all. They don't have the extra games, and that will, if we end up losing the Scudetto, that will be to Napoli because they don't have those games, and we end up playing those Euro games, and that will cost us points. That's the scenario I see here. But
yeah,
I consider still we are slight favorites because of the experience. But Napoli's team is, I think it's they haven't lost many players
Yeah.
from that title winning side. Of course, there was the big players. Who was the defender?
Jay knows. Jay, who was he?
Che. Che, yeah. Yeah, Che. They lost Che and they lost Oshimen. So that's two big guys. But they got the Conte's favorite striker back, and he's been doing well so far. So
And Bongiorno, who's been very good for them.
yeah. So effectively, they haven't like lost anyone. Of course, I don't see Lukaku as good as Oshiman, so there's that. But anyway, I think Conte can cook here, since he can prepare his team for the league matches for the whole week, every week.
Yeah, and I agree with what you guys are saying in regards to Napoli. Sorry, Jay, I just don't see Milan being able to really mount a serious title challenge, especially because they have the same schedule as we do and as Juventus do. And I think that especially this year, the European commitments are going to be a huge factor in the league campaign, especially if you end up getting those two additional matches as well. I mean, that's 10 matches that you had to play that Napoli didn't have to play. And as it's been mentioned, there's probably not a better manager than Conte when you give him a week to prepare for every match. He's going to get the vast majority of the points available. He's going to beat the weaker teams. He's going to be defensively sound. They're going to be flat track bullies, and they're just going to gobble up some easier points. The real surprising thing, I think, for Napoli is that they're doing it with a back four, which historically Conte has not used. Obviously, he's usually used a back three, but yeah, they're doing it with a 4-2-3-1. And the surprise, I think, so far has been Scott McTominay, who looks a really good player, looks a real threat in that Napoli side, and I think was actually kind of a shrewd pickup from them, because I think that he's one of those players that even looked decent at United, which is saying a lot because no one has looked good there for 10 years. And every time I would watch United, I'd still say, hey, McTominay doesn't look that bad, and that probably means he's world class because if you can look good, even remotely good in that Man United team, you probably got something decent about you. But no, in all seriousness, I think that he's a decent pickup for them, and he brings a lot of physicality. That's the type of player that Conte likes as well. So I think that he'll get a lot out of him. I do think Lukaku is not the Lukaku of prior years. He has lost a step. I don't think that he's going to score as many goals. I think that he'll still be good in hold up play. He'll still bring others into the game with him. And if you can get Kvaratskhelia, looking like he did a couple of years ago, then you might be okay. There are still some weaknesses in that team, though. Politano, I've never really been that high on. I don't think that he's necessarily a great player. Ratmani, I'm not necessarily super high on. Oliveira, I think there's still some questions about his ceiling, and Di Lorenzo has also been pretty poor for the last couple of years as well. So there's some question marks, no doubt, there in the team. I do think that we're going to need some luck with injuries. They can't really lose too many players, or their depth is probably going to get a little bit stretched. But guess what? You get less injuries when you play less games. So I think that that's also going to work out in their favor. So yeah, I would agree. I think that Napoli looks like the biggest Scudetto challenger thus far.
Two quick shout outs before we kind of conclude here, going back to the Torino match. One thing, and I've been saying this kind of to everyone, is, man, Bastoni is it's such a blessing to have him on the team. He's just such an exceptional player, and I feel like Inter fans, we should just be so thankful that he's on the team. Like, he was involved essentially on all three of the goals. Having a player like that, and given the way Oak Tree is going to run this business forever, however long Oak Tree is going to run this business, there's no guarantee that someone like Bastoni is going to stick around if they get some monster offer, which I think they will. But the way he plays, the fact that we have like an auxiliary midfielder and an auxiliary attacker, depending on where we are, it's incredible. Like, the balls into the box from him and the way he supplements our midfield and attack is it's a thing of beauty to watch. And I don't know. We're all privileged to see it because he's a special player. The other thing I'll say is, unlike Jay and others who can never miss an opportunity to take a shot at a certain player named Aslani, I've been very tough on Fratesi this year, and rightfully so. I still think that he's been a bit of a disappointment since he signed for us, but he was an integral part of all three of those goals. Like, if you guys saw it, like, he was in the box looking to like head the ball in on all three of those goals, and that creates a huge mismatch because it kind of frees up Lautaro and Thuram to be one-on-one with the center backs, because he just puts so much pressure on the back line by showing up. So he was in the mix on all three of those goals, finding himself in the box, like ready to like head in the ball. So props to Fratesi too. I think he's a great disruptor for the strikers, giving them some opportunities in the box and 1v1, which otherwise we wouldn't get with our typical midfield setup, because I don't think any of our other midfielders are as consistent about getting into the box and getting into good scoring positions as Fratesi is. So even though he didn't have a goal or an assist, I think he was very influential against that Torino match. So props to him.
Well, thank God he does that, because he doesn't do fuck else. Respectfully. He's. I mean, it's like playing with two in midfield sometimes when he's out there, and I mean, he is effectively like a third striker. And I think that probably the red card made it to where he could kind of get away with that yesterday. But I think otherwise we would have certainly noticed that lack of presence in the midfield yesterday against Torino if we were playing 11 versus 11. But yeah, he is always a threat. There's no doubt about that.
All right, let's leave it there. I have no idea how to sign off. Thanks, guys, for your participation. Let's circle back next week. Let's take this offline. Anyone else want to chip in?
Go Oak Tree.
Let's tackle that low-hanging fruit.
Enjoy your international break, guys. Go root for your home country.
Gosh.
I'll give you 5 minutes.
Go
back,
Pulisic.
I'll give you 5 minutes back. Yeah, I love that one.
All right.
Here's some time back.
And catch you next time.
Forza Inter.
Yeah.